let's go ahead and go through those. And then we will have, I did have another quick educational portion, a little short video to show you. And then Long or Kate, if you have any club updates, feel free to put those in the chat and we'll mention those after we go through the educational portion and the submitted questions. The first question, and I will pull up the agenda here just to share it with you because it's kind of a lengthy one. And as always, I'll send this out so you have the answers to it. And just a note, I did just hit record so we could share this with others as well. So let me get my screen share here. Okay, can you see the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. The first question you can see here, what does the Basecamp manager need to do to verify completion of a path before approving it? So Alex, like we were just talking, typically the VPE would check your CC manual, make sure you've completed all your speeches, and then submit the paperwork either online or you can fill it out by hand and mail it in or fax it in, whatever. So in order to do that in Pathways, and I have not experienced anyone that has reached this far yet because we are still new in Pathways, and most people who are in Pathways have just either done the assessment or maybe completed the icebreaker. So we haven't reached this, but I thought this was a good question for you guys to just keep when the time comes, because right now it's kind of irrelevant, but eventually it will be. So the VPE will still continue to verify completion in each level. And one important thing to remember is before you know it, officers will be switching in July. So we need to make sure that the incoming VPEs know that they have a little bit more work to do compared to the VPEs with the traditional program. So whenever a member goes through Pathways and submits their request, which is called a level completion request, the VPE will get a notification saying that they have a request pending. The VPE will then log into Basecamp and will review and make sure that all of the project and level requirements were met. And they can do this by reviewing the member's transcript in Basecamp. So if you recall, the VPEs are Basecamp managers, so they will be able to go in and view that information. And then once the VPE goes in, confirms that everything is completed, they'll be able to submit that for you. Then it goes to headquarters, and the traditional process will continue. The only time that, now I totally forgot my train of thought and what I was going to say. When you go through all levels, so there are 5 levels in each path, once the VPE approves your 5th level, then you'll see in Basecamp that whole path, the button changes to complete. Also, for VPEs, there's a lot of training on the Toastmasters site in Basecamp under tutorials and resources that gives a lot more information and specific step-by-step directions for how the VPE would submit that information to headquarters. And I know the second question, I know we've covered this before, and I know I mentioned it when I visited all the clubs, but we did recently have 2 people asked this question, actually, if they could reuse an icebreaker speech. And one particular question was, could they reuse their icebreaker speech from the competent communicator? And the other question was, could they each path begins with an icebreaker. They wanted to know if they could use the same icebreaker if they were going to be pursuing multiple paths. And the answer is no. All speeches must be new. Nothing transfers over from the traditional program into Pathways. And you can't do one icebreaker and repeat it every time you want to start a new path. The next question, what do members need to keep for their VPE to approve their level completion? So once you've completed all of the tasks in your level, Basecamp will automatically mark each project as complete. So you have to make sure that you assess your skills before and after in order to make sure that Basecamp marks that as complete. You have to make sure you follow all of those steps. One question that we had, I met with, I think it was Bob from the Nittany Club last week, and he wasn't sure about where to store the information related to the project. So if someone prints out an evaluation and manually fills it out. And I just wanted to remind you that you are not required to store any of that information on Basecamp. That's just a feature that there is if you want to scan and upload those evaluations just for your own personal reference. But otherwise, you don't need to complete anything for your VPE. If you're using Basecamp, you just need to go in there and make sure you're following the steps the whole way through so that when the time comes, you can submit that level completion request for your VPE. So then the fourth question, this is kind of a multi-question, so I'll read through it first and then we can talk about it a little bit. Can you clarify the approving projects versus approving level? Does the Basecamp manager have to approve each project within each level? Or the approval needs only after completing all projects in level 1 and 2 and so forth? When will the Basecamp manager see the pending request for approval? So the specific projects in Pathways, that does not require VPE approval. That's you doing your things on your own, completing the assessment, completing the speeches, and whatever else, the before assessment and the after assessment. The only time the VPE will verify completion is the completion of a level within a path. When a member submits a level completion request, which is what we talked about earlier, the VPE will again go in and ensure that all the projects and level requirements were met by viewing the member's transcript in Basecamp. Also, it's encouraged that the VPE read the project descriptions before they approve those for each member, just to ensure that the member has presented and completed all speeches and all additional requirements for that level. So that was a lot of information and 4 questions that we had. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a moment. Does anyone have any questions specifically in regard to those questions that we just covered? And for those who need to, feel free to use the chat box. I'll give you just a minute in case you do have questions. Okay, so I'm hearing none. The other part, we're just going to move right along here. Feel free to interrupt though if you do have questions. For those who recall, we did watch a short video clip, I think it was a couple weeks ago, and it was completing a level. So as you know, in Basecamp, there are tons of short little video clips and tutorials and resources to help us all through this. Since the last time we met, we watched completing a level. Today, I wanted to show you a brief video for completing a project. So if you just allow me 1 second to get this going, we can watch that. Okay, so this is coming up. Hopefully you guys can see it. So again, this is completing a project, and we will just take a minute here to watch this, and then we can chat further.
After you have completed all assignments in your project, return to the project and complete the Assess Your Skills After activity. You will see the same series of statements, which you will use to evaluate your skill level again. Rate each statement from 1 to 5, as explained in the directions. Select the Next button to advance to the next statement. Select the Submit button. Save your scores. You will now see a comparison of your before and after scores. Use these to reflect on what you have learned in this project. Review the conclusion page and close the project. On your education transcript, things have changed. Notice that the other projects in level 1 are now unlocked. On the left, the curriculum progress tracker now reads 5%, and the level progress tracker shows 25%. There is also a check mark on the Icebreaker project, indicating completion. You can return at any time to review the information included in the Icebreaker project. Also, notice that the burgundy button to the right of the Icebreaker has changed to Evaluate. You have the opportunity to give feedback about the project you just completed. To do so, select the Evaluate button. Follow the prompts to complete your evaluation of the project. Please note that the opportunity to evaluate is only available for 10 days after project completion. After you submit the project evaluation, the button has now switched back to Launch. If you would prefer not to evaluate the project, you can still access the content by selecting the arrow adjacent to the Evaluate button and selecting Launch. Now you can select the next project you would like to complete in this level, Evaluation and Feedback, or Researching and Presenting.
And just to note, after you do the icebreaker, you do have to start with the icebreaker, but after you do that, the other projects will become available, and you can do those in either order. It's just important that you start the icebreaker first, or else those buttons won't become available for you to move forward. The other thing that I really like about Basecamp is doing the before and after assessment and how it gives you the comparison at the end. And that's really your way of trying to find out if you learned anything from the project, if things changed from how you felt before you did the speech to after the speech. So I think that's going to be a really valuable tool for us to use to be able to learn and grow. And also, I think that's a really great tool for the mentors. If you are mentoring someone, I think that's something you guys can look at together and talk about areas of improvement and how you can improve those things. And really just take a look at what has changed and maybe what hasn't changed. And again, ways that you can improve that. Does anyone have any questions on that video clip?
Shauna, it's Alex. I don't have a question related to the video clip, but you and I were talking as we got started that we don't have in our club a VPE.
Yeah.
You know, so where would I go for my own personal needs? But I think a bigger question is, where will this stuff be directed to in the absence of a VPE in our club through Pathways?
The Basecamp managers are the VPE and president. So Alex, you should have access to being a Basecamp manager. And how mine looks when you log into Basecamp, there's a little drop down that says I want to enter as like a Pathways guide, or I want to enter as a club member for my club. It should be in that area in which you can access as a Basecamp manager. I will follow up after we meet with specific instructions on how Basecamp managers can access that information.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'm just making a note. Hold on one second. The next portion of our meeting is typically club updates. Feel free to jump in if you have updates, but I will mention that unfortunately, due to the snow last week, the session at the Hosses Corporation was moved. That is going to be next week. So I will be there to meet with anyone who is planning to attend that, and we will be reviewing some Basecamp things and Pathways things. So if you are going to be there, I will see you then. And then also, Long is the VPE at the Pingers Club, and he has invited me to come to their meeting on Wednesday. And the plan is to, their club president has invited everyone who can to bring a laptop, and they have a MiFi, I think it's called, space set up, and we're really going to have a hands-on session. So we're going to try and get as many people logged into Basecamp as possible, complete their assessment, and get started. So I'm really excited about that. I think it'll be a good time to just get a better idea of where people are and help to answer questions. And hopefully I can learn from that as well. Many of you know that I am not starting in Pathways yet just because I'm trying to finish the traditional program. So I don't actually have a lot of experience. So I'm looking forward to that session because I think we'll all be able to learn together as well. Aside from that, does anyone else have any other updates as far as where their club members are in Pathways? Okay, if not, those were the only items that I wanted to share with you guys today. We do have our final session, so part of my role as the Pathways Guide was to host 15 virtual support sessions, one each week. So here we are on our 14th session already. So next Monday will be our final session. That will be Monday, February 19th at 2 p.m. In the same Zoom location. And then after that, I will still be available for questions. We won't we won't be having these virtual sessions anymore, but I'm always available via email or phone if you need to ask any questions, or if you want me to come to your club and answer questions, I'm happy to do that. So if there aren't any other questions today, we can go ahead and wrap up, and I will hope to see you all next week at our final virtual support session.
Sean, I have to ask, are you, and this isn't a fair question, are you happy that it's over?
Yes.
Not a fair question because
well, yes and no, because it's been a lot of fun, you know, kind of teaching people this new program and getting to know people in other clubs. And the sessions have been great. I just kind of wish that we wouldn't have had to do this virtual support session so soon, because right now people aren't jumping into Pathways like I think maybe headquarters would have expected. People are trying to finish up the educational program. And so I think it's difficult for these sessions because people don't have a lot of questions. And I think when the time comes that they do have the questions, we're not going to be required to have these sessions anymore. So yes and no. I mean, it's been a great experience, and I'm kind of glad that they're over. But also, I think that had they been later in the process, we could have had a lot more valuable conversation with people and more people joining in because they have questions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I know once I get into it, and I've got 1 foot in, I guess, I'm going to have questions, and it's good to know that you're around, and we have a connection. So thank you for that, and I just want to commend you for, I can't just imagine the time you put into this. So gosh, thank you.
It has been a lot of time, but that's okay.
Oh, I know. I see it. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, I will go ahead and send out this video recording and send out those meeting notes. And I will hopefully talk to you on Monday, or maybe see you before that or at the next officer makeup training.